Welcome to the Eye on Autism podcast. And now, please join our host, clinical psychologist Dr. Michael Romas, as he engages leading experts in autism and neurodiversity in thought-provoking discussions designed to inform, inspire, and support people on the autism spectrum, as well as their families, staff, and community.
Welcome, folks. You've picked such a nice time to join us at the beginning of the new school year when the kids are transitioning back to school, and we have two accomplished guests to speak to some of the challenges around transition. We have Erica Villarreira and Rana Baberi here to speak to the issues. So a little bit about our guests. Erica, you are coordinator of educational services in DDI's early childhood program, where you started as a teacher assistant before going back to school for a teaching degree with a focus on students with disabilities and in early childhood, as well as a degree in educational leadership. Rana, with 30 years of experience at DDI, started as a teacher assistant, progressing to parent training coordinator, behavioral specialist, staff training coordinator, and currently as a project coordinator. In your career, you have been a committee member of program activities, employee engagement, human rights, DEI, and research review committees. So both with really significant resumes, to say the very least. And this really is a challenging time, isn't it? So it's just in the order of how kids go through school. Let's start with early childhood first. Eric, if you could speak to some of the challenges.
Sure. Back to school can be a great time of the year, but it can also be a very stressful time of year for our students as well as for their families. For many of our students, because they are preschoolers, this could be their first experience leaving home, going into a school setting, whether it is their first time going on a bus or it's their first time that their parents are dropping them off at school, which can be very hard on our little guys because they don't know if someone's coming back to pick them up. So there tends to be a lot of tears in the very beginning, but once they come into the classroom, they see there's a lot of great toys, there's a lot of teachers and staff that are very happy to see them, and we usually win them over.
Well, I bet. So how do you prepare the kids, the teachers, the families, the parents? What has to be put in place to make the transition work?
We actually do send a social story before the students start school, where it's about welcome to school, a picture of the school, where they're going to be walking into the playground, because that tends to be the most favorite location in the school. We talk to the families that transitions are going to be a little bit rough, but the consistency and making sure that they send them every day is important.
Well, that might be a new word for a lot of listeners and viewers. What is a social story?
It is a story where there can be pictures and simple sentences that will describe what they're going to do. So rather than just telling the child what they're going to do, it breaks it down to step-by-step in easy language that they can understand of what they're going to be doing.
Right. So because our children are on the spectrum, it's really helpful to have them anticipate what's going to happen next. And I imagine that reduces the anxiety for the kids?
Yes, as well as the anxiety for the families, because we find that if the parents are feeling confident, that does help our students as well.
Do you find, Erica, that the social stories that you use can also generalize to the family in their home life as well? So, in other words, when you're working with kids on educational curriculums and some of the challenges that we deal with, are parents able to kind of adapt some of those strategies for the home setting?
Yes, actually, when we do parent trainings, that is something that we can work on with the families. And there's a lot of great apps that will also help families that they can take pictures on their phone and then put in the stories in there as well. So that is a great skill for our families to be able to learn by the time that they leave our program. And I know Rana probably has had a lot of experience with that as well.
Yes, you're Rana with the children, and now they're a little bit older. What does that mean for your program?
Continue to say similarly to the younger individuals, the students that we serve at Children's Day program also have the same difficulties. The families have the same difficulties. And with transitions, it's very important to prepare, right? So if I have something that's coming up and I don't know about it and it gets dropped on me, it's difficult for me to adjust to that. And for our students, they need to anticipate that change. And that communication that Erica just mentioned with the families is really important, working together to prepare the individuals for the program, the start of the school year, and social stories being one of the strategies. Visual schedules are also important, calendars. Just like you and I rely on our calendars to let us know what's coming up, I think our students need to know that as well.
Given the fact that our population sometimes have sensory challenges, right? I imagine there's some attention to room placements, positioning kids with specific teachers, right? What does that look like in both programs?
I think for our population, for our preschoolers, it is a lot on that schedule and a lot of visuals that will help them. We do work on day one to create that routine. And routines are so great for everyone, especially for our learners, because it is something that they can rely on. It's really hard if you think about it, a 3 and 4-year-old, regardless of disability, to then be placed in a setting where they don't know what is expected of them or what is going to happen next. We do use a lot of visual schedules, classroom schedules, and as well as individual schedule. So the individual schedule is a smaller version of the classroom schedule, but it is portable. It can walk with the child. So when they're leaving the classroom, the adult will carry the little schedule for the child. So when they're leaving the playground, which tends to be a big area of difficulty, they can see that when they go back into the classroom, they're going to do an activity with Play-Doh. So there's a picture of the Play-Doh there so they can understand what is expected of them. When they're back in the classroom, maybe in the class schedule, they're seeing that it's time for sensory play. But the individual schedule does tend to help a lot. So our teachers tend to have those ready on day one, just a little bit of generic pictures, and then as we get to know the students, then we can really personalize them.
What is sensory play?
It depends on the learner on what we do. With our preschoolers, a lot of it has to do with like touch. So they do love shaving cream, finger painting, some of the slime, the glitter, that kind of stuff. Preschool is a messy place. And for our students with sensory needs, they definitely do love it.
I have no doubt. Ron, is there an analog in the children's program, maybe not sensory play, but something that kind of addresses some of the sensory issues or the self-stimulation that you sometimes see in that population? What do you guys do to address that?
We have a lot of environmental modifications for our students, and some attends to the entirety of the classroom, some attend to the individual student that may have that specific need. I think going back to communication with the families, a lot of the families are really great at communicating that information to us about the needs of their child if they're new to us. And then, of course, for the students we've had for quite a few years, we conduct assessments about their needs, and based on what their sensory needs might be or academic or reinforcement needs, we make those modifications. We purchase products that might meet those sensory needs, whether it be auditory, visual, tactile. So we embed that into not just their classroom setting, but throughout the program. And that helps them ease into it. And then sometimes there's a exclusionary factor. It might be noise sensitivity, crowd sensitivity. Those are things that we want to eliminate or minimize. So besides just adding sensory components into the program, we also try to remove or minimize the sensory components.
As you guys describe your educational and your behavioral programs, you have to really address a lot of needs, and very often you're looking at the functions of behavioral challenges, which sometimes characterize the people we support. What are you looking at? And for viewers who may be the first time that they're hearing the function of the behaviors that get in the way of learning sometimes, what are some of those behaviors, and what are some of the reasons for them? And then as part of that question, how do we address it?
Well, for many of our families, we might be the first people explaining that to them. Right. Again, because many of our students maybe have just recently received a diagnosis or are coming out of early intervention. So when we're asking them about questions about what are some of the behaviors that they're seeing, we start to talk to them about that investigation of like what and asking those questions to the families, like, what happened before the behavior? Can you explain to me a little bit about how often it's occurring? Last time that it happened, what did you do? What did the child do? And that's how we start to then explain to them as to, all right, this behavior is not just because the child is biting, but let's take a look back and what is the child trying to communicate with us? And what is the function of that behavior of biting? What is the child trying to get? Is it because they're trying to get something? Is it because of frustration? But we have to kind of take it into baby steps initially to get them to understand that it's not just that, oh, well, the child just bites, but it's more of, let's take a look at the big picture. Let's look at what's happening before, during, and after the behavior.
So would you agree, and then Ron, on the same question, would you agree that all behaviors have a reason? So when we're talking about a function, we're talking about essentially the reason for the behavior. And as part of providers, what we're looking for is kind of a science to that, really good detectives. And I know, Ronnie, you can speak to this as well, that a larger acronym, and I think this will be good for parents who might be hearing this for the first time and some clinicians, if you don't mind taking that acronym MEETS apart, because I think that really, right? And just explain that for viewers who might be hearing this for the first time.
So any of us that engage in behaviors, whether it be problematic or good behaviors, there's a reason for it, and there's a function, as you mentioned. And when we do assessments, we have an entire clinical team of professionals, board-certified behavior analysts, we have school psychologists, and then our staff are also trained in positive behavior support practices, utilizing applied behavior analysis methodologies, and we conduct assessments, collect data, as Erica mentioned. We refer to them as ABCs. And from that, we analyze the function, which is the MEETS, whether it's a medical reason, an escape-motivated behavior, attention-seeking, tangible-seeking, or sensory-motivated. And our strategies are purely aligned with the function to replace that function for problem behaviors. And we also provide parent training, and we have this consistent communication with the families throughout this process, so that if we both should have consistent communication as well as a good understanding of the reasons, so that if we implement the strategy in the school setting, and I'm sure this is the same for your program, we would like the families to implement those strategies as well. And the more people that work on these treatment strategies, the more likelihood that you're addressing the problem behavior and decreasing it, and perhaps even minimizing it to zero levels. So when we're talking about back to school, these are important variables to consider, what to anticipate, because there are students who love coming back to school, and we may not anticipate any problem behaviors, and then there are some who are very challenged with that change in routine. I mean, I'm one of those, where I have a 2-week vacation, and coming back to work is difficult for me sometimes. So.
In your world, Erica, back to school, for your kids, I think this is the first time that they're getting these kind of assessments. Are there particular protocols that have to be put in place specific to little kids that are different than maybe what Ron is talking about? How is this assessed, their particular, the functions of their behaviors? I'm sure there's some observation. What else is looked at?
We definitely tried to think of that pyramid model. So thinking of the tier 1 strategies first, which is more of like this classroom makeup, the environment, if there are things that we can do that will address as a class. And then we start to look more on that tier 2, which is the social emotional. So a lot on those emotions, teaching them how to react to certain emotions, or even just identifying, what is it that I'm feeling right now, as well as teaching friendship skills. We might be the first person using the word friends. So we do talk a lot about feelings and a lot about friendship in our preschool classes. And then if we need to, then we are looking at that tier 3 strategy, where it's more individual on the child and then looking more on those like function behaviors. We do try to include our families in all the situations, and we're doing a lot of training on what the pyramid looks like. Reinforcer inventory is a big one. in school in September, we're trying to get a good sense of what does this child really likes, what motivates this person, as well as then sending the same inventory home and asking the families, even if it's things that we might not have at school, but tell us more. Tell us what are things that your child really enjoys doing at home, because maybe we might not be able to have the backyard trampoline, but maybe we can find something similar in our class setting.
In addition to teaching and treatment, what makes back to school fun? What makes it really fun for the kids? What's the most fun part of it?
Well,
They love the playground. They love the sand. They love the mud kitchen. Anything that can get messy, the slides. It is a great time. Our students tend to go outside at least twice a day, once in the morning, once in the afternoon. They absolutely love it. The sad part is when it's time to go back inside. One student, he just had this week, so we've been in school for a couple of weeks, and they had to rearrange the schedule a little bit, so they weren't going to go outside at their regular time. And he noticed. He was outside and looking around, because he knew around this time, he doesn't know time, but he knows around this time we go outside. So he was looking forward to it.
I bet. And what makes it fun for the older kids?
I'm glad she brought up reinforcer assessments, because what motivates us to do the things that we don't like to do. So knowing those motivators helps our students sometimes if we have it already planned and available for them, and let them know that they have access to it. And I think the staff also, our students develop a bond, our staff develop a bond with our students, and the idea of coming back to school to see your friends, to see the staff that you've connected with, that socialization aspect is important. And for some of our students, I think routine really helps, and enjoyable. Some people might not consider this, but having a routine can be an enjoyable thing for some of our students, because it keeps them aligned. They're very schedule-oriented with some individuals, knowing that they are coming back to school. They are getting back into the groove of things with schedules, and having all of these special activities, whether it be with gym, going outside, having music, art, technology, and all these vocational trainings that we do, having the opportunity to go out to the community with their friends. Those can be enjoyable. But everything's individualized, so.
That's kind of what we mean, don't we, by person-centered planning. There's nothing cookie-cutter here. You're tailoring all your interventions, and that means really knowing the children really, really well. Do you find that over time that your relationships get warmer and more intimate and friendly, both with the kids as well as their families? Do you feel like you really get to know them in a rich way?
Yes, definitely. The teachers really do bond with their students and their families. Because I think also we have that parent training component, they definitely build that bond with the families and understand them. Families are a very big part of the behavior plans. They're a big part of the learning. There's our topics of every month that we're doing. Our curriculum has to do with units of study, and every month there is a component that has to do with family connections. So the families are able to share things that make their family special into the classroom as well, and that makes that connection with the families, the teachers, the staff, and the students even bond. I mean, they are little, our students, they're 3 and 4. They're only going to be with us for maybe a year, 2 years, but it's crazy to see how close it is, because when we do our preschool graduations, everyone's crying.
I have no doubt. You know, when we first said hello, I referenced the inclusion model that seems to characterize both settings. Excuse me, the idea that in addition to kids with special needs, we would have typically developing kids mixed with. So that poses a special challenge, does it, in terms of bridging the enjoyments, the reinforcers, and the way that kids mix together. What have you seen, and what are you able to do to facilitate a successful inclusion model? That's a question for both of you, because I imagine that changes a little bit as the kids get older.
Well, the strategies all work. It's universal. That's what's great about these strategies, the timers, the schedules. Everyone can benefit from it. What's great about having the integrated classes in our program is also it's not just a one-way. It's not the students who are becoming the models for the students with special needs, but the students with special needs can also be a great model for the other students as well. So to see them connect and play together, because again, we want to remember they are preschoolers. Yes, some of our students have special needs, but they're still 3 and 4 years old, and their job is to play. So that's really what we want to see.
Let's spend a moment on that, how the kids with, the typically developing kids are benefiting around kids with special cognitive challenges. What is their takeaway? What are they getting?
They're learning empathy. They're learning patience. We might not see the end results, but I'm pretty sure as they get older, they're going to remember these things. For example, my daughters went to DDI as typical developing students, so they were there. And as I'm seeing them now in elementary school, I do see how them being at DDI has helped them tremendously with their patience with other students who might be having a harder time in their classrooms. They don't get frustrated. They're just kind of like, well, he has special needs. He needs a little bit more time. So I'm glad that I was able to send them.
Let's shape this question just a little bit more as we go to you, Rana. The idea that now this particular issue falls under the larger umbrella of neurodiversity. So how we're seeing these kids and adults who may or may not be typically developing, how does that affect the lens and the response to kids that wouldn't otherwise necessarily be in one setting? What I really mean is that we're not seeing kids necessarily as only challenged. We're seeing neurodiversity, cognitive advantages. So we're asking, I think, kids who are included, typically developing kids, to also see this population a little bit differently. Does that affect the way the teachers interact with the kids by not seeing them as overly just challenged, by seeing them in terms of their abilities? What does that look like? How does that affect the classroom, the setting, and the feelings?
I don't think our teachers look at our students differently.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
That's what I meant.
You know, if it's difficult to describe the relationship between our staff and our students, particularly our students who've been with us for a while and our staff who've been with us for a while. And I'm sure Erica can concur that when you've spent so much time with our students over the years, being 20 years at DDI and 30 years myself, some of our students become family because we've seen them grow up. And this is the relationship that our staff have with the students. So there is no distinction except to look for their abilities and to help them progress with their abilities. In reference to the inclusive model, the early childhood program does have that ability to do that with the students, where the program is set up for that inclusionary setting. The Children's Day program for the ages 5 through 22, it's we're a nonprofit private sector, and our students have challenges that can be served in a district setting or other schools. So inclusion is limited. We do inclusive programs, social skills training, groups within the program, because we have varying levels of abilities within our own program. Outside of that, we do community integration, we do trips out to various places, and then we also encourage families to take their child to whatever activities that might be available to them in the community, or put them in sports or other activities that gives them that inclusive opportunity with their neurotypical peers.
You know, collectively, we've all been in the field a long time. And I have to say, it's been my observation, maybe you'll agree, I hope you do, that there have been changes. There's been an evolution in the field from really fundamental strategies that were available to us 30 years ago and 20 years ago, both with respect to the science of the field, which has grown. You guys both carry certifications that are really different than what was necessary all those years ago. Can you explain to the viewers what those changes look like, the science of it, and how that affects back to school? We talked a little bit about understanding the function of behavior better than we've ever done before, and what the assessments look like. And Rana, you both actually spoke a little bit to the differences around the sensibilities in the field. I remember all those years when I got involved, being on the spectrum carried a stigma. And then in order to get services, people really fought to get that stigma or to get that label, so support and funding would come. Where are we now with respect to a possible stigma and how the field sees people on the spectrum, and particularly people who are still very, very young? How has it changed?
I think, especially here on Long Island, it's more visible. So you do see a lot more community activities and events that are geared for our population. Public libraries have really taken that into consideration and will create curriculums that will try to include our young people with sensory needs and try to integrate with also the remainder of the community. I remember years ago trying to bring one of my students into a public library event, and it was very hard because it wasn't geared to my student. It really was us trying to make it work. Whereas now if you go, they have taken that into consideration. There's dimmer lights in some of these libraries. They have sensory breaks in different places. The children's museums will have a special space where children can just take a break and it's a calming area. And I don't think that that was something visible or something that was offered in the past. And especially for children, that does make it a little bit easier. So if they are starting to overwhelm, or if they need to wear their headphones, it's not something that is stigmatizing and it looks out of the norm. Especially headphones, like now it's a trend. Yeah. So if they're wearing it, it's not that big of a deal. But I think also the community has also just become a little bit more aware that there are people in the community that might have some special needs and have been more inviting.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I know the viewers will be glad to hear that. I think this might be a Rana question. Are the expectations of success in the world different for children? It could be an early childhood question as well, but the child is a little more developed a little bit later. What about the expectations of the child and the community expectation of the child? Is there more of a belief that that child will reach potential, be independent? Has that changed?
I would say so, absolutely. I mean, I'm old enough to say that I see the distinction in the school settings and in society as a whole. Social media, I think, brings light. And do I say stigma still exists? Probably in certain sectors. It still does. There's still limitations. But people have come a long way with inclusion, with opportunities, with making those modifications in community settings as a level of understanding of the needs of people that have those different needs.
I think
I hope
that's
that answered your question.
No, it does. I think that's true, and I'm hoping that resonates with viewers as well. I can say through my own observations, and I bet yours too, that we're seeing people in very successful occupations, really out in the community, in corporate settings. There was a time when people really believed that the best job assignments would be in tech and tech only because of a certain social skill deficit. And we're seeing that being challenged, and we're also seeing people diagnosed later. And that's why I think that what you guys are doing at this early stage in their lives is absolutely just so critical in terms of actually ensuring later success. And I think it probably affects what the spirit of back to school. That has changed. I can tell you again, sharing with you, real history. There wasn't the celebration that there is today of the resource of good schooling, and I hope you're seeing that in parents as well. Are you? Yeah.
I mean, there's a mix.
Yes, that's honest.
Right. There's always a mix, but I have to say that parents are very educated and knowledgeable about what's available to them, and they're making good decisions for their children, and that awareness has to do with their own ability to understand more, learn more, to speak to their practitioners who probably are at a different level now than they were 30 years ago. And if we go back to 7 years ago. Things have changed over time. So that does have a great effect on the success rate of the individuals. And I'm glad you mentioned the different abilities. You see more and more individuals with developmental disabilities obtaining jobs that people typically would not think would be possible for them, or going to college or having those opportunities. Not every person has the ability to get to that level with the population that we serve, but they do have that potential. And coming into this field and having this notion that individuals can't learn, students don't have these abilities, really would be limiting. And we don't want to do that. We want to expose, we want to teach, we want to see what their opportunities are out there. And I would hope the community continues to open up to the concept that they should allow our individuals to participate and be active members of the community setting in the vocational world, so that we can tap into their potential in these environments. And that would never happen if community members would not allow that.
Well, I just want to say thank you to both. I think that's really a nice place to kind of turn right back to everybody and say the landscape, around autism spectrum disorder, and now the larger issue of neurodiversity, has really changed, and it's changed and moving in a very good direction. I'm excited about the changes, and that comes through in both of you as well. And really, more to come, more science, more heart, more understanding. So again, thank you both for everything you contribute to the field, and I hope that we can have you back again. I'm going to make a point of it. So, folks, if you found this content useful, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to be alerted every time a new episode drops. And please join us next month when we will be celebrating Disability Rights and Employment Awareness Month and discussing supported employment of adults with disabilities and its many benefits to employers. Thanks, and see you next time.
Thank you for tuning in to the Eye on Autism podcast. If you found this content useful, please like, subscribe, and share your ideas for future episodes by following us on social. Until next time, thanks for tuning in.